Hello there.
The cinema courtroom is now in session.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back to the Cinema Courtroom Show, a podcast where your favorite blockbusters await trial with your very own host and galactic judge, Mark, your one and only. Do not forget to like and subscribe on whatever, and I mean whatever, streaming platform that you happen to be tuning in on, whether it be Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Amazon Music, or the Cinema Courtroom YouTube channel. Because, listen, every click on the icon counts. Don't forget to ring the notification bell and share this podcast with your friends, family, cat, dog, pigeon, whomever. Now, without further ado, let us begin with our review topic of interest, 1917.
Colonel Mackenzie is in command of the 2nd. He sent word yesterday morning he was going after the retreating Germans. He is convinced he has them on the run. That if he can break their lines now, he will turn the tide. He is wrong. Colonel Mackenzie has not seen these aerials of the enemy's new line. Come around here, gentlemen. 3 miles deep, field fortifications, defenses, artillery, the like of which we've never seen before. The 2nd are due to attack the line shortly after dawn tomorrow. They have no idea what they're in for. And we can't warn them. As a parting gift, the enemy cut all our telephone lines. Your orders are to get to the 2nd at Quasi Wood, 1 mile southeast of the town of Auguste. Deliver this to Colonel Mackenzie. It is a direct order to call off tomorrow morning's attack. If you don't, it will be a massacre. We will lose 2 battalions. 1,600 men, your brother among them. You think you can get there in time?
1917 is a movie that demands the jury's attention for this review installment of the Cinema Courtroom. We're going to talk about how it's shot, the plot of the movie, historical elements, considering that it's set in the World War I era, as well as acting performances. And I also want to delve into the expansive catalog of war films and where 1917 stands in that catalog. It is crucial to know that 1917 is about 2 soldiers who have been assigned an important message to deliver to the 2nd British Battalion. A relatively simple plot, hence why 1917 is able to be edited into one shot, which is a technical attribute of this film that I am definitely going to talk about in length in this review, because that's the one where I'm very fascinated about. Because, listen, the thing is, in a way, the one-shot editing defines the stakes of the movie. The protagonist only has one shot to deliver the message to the battalion, because it is a life or death situation, obviously. Therefore, on a technical and figurative level, it is the most definitive of the experience that the average moviegoer has with the movie. Now let's jump straight to the review, beginning with how 1917 is shot and edited. 1917 is shot in a unique and engaging way. It is actually filmed in a way to make it look like it was shot in, well, it's self-explanatory. One shot for 2 whole hours. Or 1 hour and 59 minutes. But it's close to 2 hours. And while a magician should never disclose their secrets, except to the trusted employees, there are actually 61 cuts in 1917. It wasn't literally shot in one shot with the camera. And then, that's a wrap, everyone. And the movie, it didn't end like that. Like, I only found that out when I watched 1917 for the 2nd time. And I counted like 5 shots because I was paying very close attention. But I wanted to find a verified number of shots because I'm sure there might have been more. So I looked on the Vox channel, and that is when I actually saw that 61 shots were revealed. But something that 1917 has managed to do exceptionally well is that they make the cuts fade out, and so they were able to maintain the continuity of the so-called one shot. That being said, it is still a remarkable milestone for 1917's filmmaking because each reel was only an estimated time duration of 9 minutes. Now, if you subtract that with the total runtime of the movie, 1 hour and 59 minutes is the runtime. We would then be left with 1 hour and 50 minutes of single shots. That's pretty crazy. Like the fact that they're able to pull off a one shot at all. Because it takes a lot of rehearsal and, stuff has to align with the narrative in every detail in the background. So it's hard. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say that they made this film with ease. Like, not to mention that 1917, in my opinion, on a technical level, reflects true creativity of media. The amount of editing that is required, the editing software to mask those cuts. And no, I don't mean like utilizing foreground objects. I mean the actual digital creations of the soldiers. Alright, so I talked about how 1917 was shot and edited to make it seem like it was in one shot. But technical attributes aside, how about the plot attribute, which I believe is the most important? 1917, as a premise, is a gloomy representation of war, and the simplicity of 1917's plotline increases the action scenes in this movie. We get to see the action-infested journey of two young British Lance Corporals, William and Tom Blake, who are being sent on this mission to call off an attack that might compromise the lives of 1,600 military soldiers. As I've already stated in the start of this review, that and the one-shot editing makes it a life or death situation. The scene when Tom Blake is brutally stabbed by the pilot, who they show hospitality to at first, but then, that comes to bite them in the ass later because the pilot turns on them and stabs one of them. And then just like that, William knows that Blake is going to die from his stab wounds. So does Blake. But anyway, there is this piece of dialogue that's the most emotionally jarring of the entire 1917 movie. Am I dying? And then William responds, yes, you are. That very scene, let me just say, not only adds to the caliber of the acting performance, which I will talk about in a moment, but it steers the wheel of the plot. We expect Blake, who is the protagonist, to have a cookie cutter ending. I, for one, do not expect him to die before the end of this movie, but I think that just adds to the passing of the torch when it comes to being the first protagonist. William's hand is now on the stick of the protagonist torch. We can see, based on this scene alone, that the soldiers' lives are nothing short of fragile. It goes to illustrate that there is no plot armor in the battlefield. I mean, sure, it would have been more ambitious for the screenwriters to have both William and Tom Blake die, but then that would just abruptly end the 1917 film. Now, I've talked about how 1917 was shot, edited, and the effectively illustrated plot attributes. I would be remiss if I hadn't gone into the historical elements of the movie, and whether or not it has been A, effectively dramatized enough to impact the audience, or B, historical accuracy. Does it do justice to the actual event and time period? I will say in regards to historical accuracy, because 1917 has shown Sikh soldiers serving in the war. It acknowledged their historical contribution to the British battalion. And sometimes there are cases where, not enough war films show anyone except British soldiers most of the time. It's almost like we're just looking at propaganda, which I suppose, 1917 could be conceived as propaganda. But, it's still important to acknowledge that there are other people in the British Army. While many of these films incorporate effective, drama that impacts the audience, and sometimes it can be, very dramatic to have just the British Army and then have that one British person bust through the front lines and save everyone. But it disrupts the scales between effective drama and historical accuracy because it might do little to no justice to the actual event. But I'm proud to say 1917 manages to find an even ground between A and B because it is both effectively dramatized and it has historical accuracy too. So, just to recap again, I've discussed how 1917 was shot and edited, well-illustrated plot, historical elements. How about the acting performances? Are they top-notch? What is the quality of them? I want to go back to the scene where Blake is dying. Let me just say that if you're fascinated with realistic depictions of someone dying and slipping into a state of nothingness, then you should definitely watch 1917 as per the Cinema Courtroom's recommendations. Now, why does Blake's death scene increase the acting performance quality level, you may ask? Well, when you pay close attention to William's acting, you then begin to realize that, oh, hold on a minute, the acting performance was acted in a way to distract you from Blake slipping into his state of nothingness, just being dead. Like, I had to play the scene again to think to myself, okay, he was still dying while William, said something. And it is not only a testament to how great the acting performance is, but also how well written and thought out the dialogue for 1917 is. Now, to recap again for the last time, before we get into 1917's comparison with other war films, I discussed the way 1917 was edited and shot, vividly illustrated story, the balance between both A, historical accuracy, and B, effective dramatization. The question now is that despite these established elements, where do I think 1917 stands in the war movie catalog to the average moviegoer who watches war films? 1917, from the way I see through the lens of it, is meant to shy away from the victory aspect that we see so many times in so many war films, such as Greyhound or even Dunkirk, directed by the great Christopher Nolan. Because this movie is set in World War One. There aren't that many victories that we can really see as a point of reference. 1917 shows us in-depth trenches, rats, and accurate depiction of death, as we've seen with Blake's death scene, the heroism of William being disregarded after he is told to immediately fuck off by Benedict Cumberbatch's character. I believe he was the general at the very end of the movie, just after William risked his life just to deliver a simple message. And that's another thing I want to quickly touch on. Usually the movie is focused on one, particular high-ranking soldier leading his, battalion. But we don't really get to see the people who play minor roles, like, that aren't of any significance. But we get to see someone who's not in a significant rank, but he is tasked to just deliver a message. He doesn't gun that many people down. All he does is run. He runs and runs. He doesn't come up with a plan to invade an enemy base or whatever. All he is doing, because of the simplistic plot, is delivering the simple message. There is no victory. And I think that's why 1917 is titled the way that it is titled. Because 1917 is the year of World War I. A war that, let's be honest, had little to no victories for the ordinary history buff to talk about. With all of these points down, the Cinema Courtroom recommends 1917 because 1917's one-shot editing beyond compare engages the audience into the movie. And then there is that high plot caliber, effective dramatization while still preserving the historical accuracy. And it has a high ranking compared to other war movies. The Cinema Courtroom is proud to say that 1917's monumental scale, filmmaking, and delicate storytelling is not going to go unnoticed to the connoisseur of filmmaking. Court is adjourned. You may be seated. And now we begin to approach the second half of the Cinema Courtroom show, which is the post-sentencing hearing. What is the post-sentencing hearing, you may ask? Well, I'm glad you inquired about this. In the first half of the Cinema Courtroom podcast, we reviewed one of the films that I've selected: old and new, big and small, underrated and overrated, the broken and the damned, black, white, brown, orange, and blue. Then, in the second half of the Cinema Courtroom show, I assemble all of the leftover topics that pertain to the film industry in general. Movie news and movie-relevant subject matters that aren't just limited to one specific movie, and integrated into one post-sentencing hearing list. Think of it as an after-party that is long overdue, where you are invited, or in judiciary terms, an invitation to a retrial for the purpose of rectifying an unfair hearing. Because sometimes, like your organic sapien that I am, I find that I've been too critically generous or harsh about a movie. So, the majority of the time, or all the time really, my opinions do change after a rewatch or two, which means I am compelled to review it again in a post-sentencing hearing. If you listen this far into the podcast, then I salute you for sticking around to the second half of the Cinema Courtroom show. If you enjoy what you're hearing in the first half of the show and what I have to say, if you haven't done so already, I would very much appreciate it if you give this podcast a reshare and like this episode by clicking the thumbs up or heart icon on whatever, and I mean whatever, platform that you happen to be tuning in on. Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Amazon Music, or the Cinema Courtroom YouTube channel. This way, you will be supporting the Cinema Courtroom as well as its future episodes, installments, and assets. That being said, I salute you in advance for your generous engagement and support, and I hope you continue to join us in the ride to success. In this hearing, we are going to cover the following: the actor for Darth Vader, James Earl Jones, officially retiring as the Darth Vader character in Star Wars, MCU's Black Panther possibly being leaked on a Lego set, and finally, blonde actor Ana De Armas visiting Marilyn Monroe's grave, and whether or not it honors Marilyn Monroe's character. Enjoy.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Star Wars jury, the Cinema Courtroom is saddened to talk about this news in this segment of the Cinema Courtroom show. James Earl Jones is officially retiring for playing my favorite character in Star Wars history, Darth Vader. And I mean, before we go into what the implications of James Earl Jones' Darth Vader retirement might be, I think we should acknowledge the sheer amount of work and dedication that James Earl Jones has brought to the original Star Wars franchise. It is absolutely astounding. And despite the fact that, Darth Vader has committed evil, genocide, child murder, and whatnot, the audience is eagerly anticipating when we're going to see Darth Vader on screen next, whether it be the big or small screen, television or movies. I mean, I remember when they announced the casting for Rogue One in June 2016. I used to be all about who's getting casted into what. I would look on IMDb and then, cross-check it to make sure it was accurate. So before the movie came out, I saw that James Earl Jones was listed for Rogue One. And let me just say, I was so damn excited because James Earl Jones was going to officially return in that movie. It goes without saying that to me and many Star Wars fans, Darth Vader is an absolute icon. And while the plot for his character arc is a reflection of Star Wars' best writing and screenplay, with the mask and all the fine visual stuff, a psychologically challenged person is who Darth Vader is. And Darth Vader is solely reliant on a machine to survive. We must give more than half of the credit to James Earl Jones, though. I mean, on top of the excellent writing, James Earl Jones has managed, and despite his age, he's managed to follow up on the majority of his performances. That in itself is a true demonstration of sheer commitment to a fan-favorite role. You might be wondering now, what are the implications now that James Earl Jones has retired as the iconic Darth Vader? What happens to the voice acting rights? These are very fair questions, which I hope I'm able to answer to your satisfaction. So, I want to firstly talk about the rights to the character. The rights to the Darth Vader character are actually with Lucasfilms, obviously, but also a Ukrainian-owned audio company, which is called Respeecher. And obviously, the credits for the Darth Vader appearances go to James Earl Jones himself. But then, now he signed off the rights, the voice acting rights to the character, to these studios. Alright, so let me just talk about a second thing. Although James Earl Jones is sadly retiring, which, let's face it, none of us can get over, both Lucasfilms and Respeecher will still consult with James Earl Jones on any future plans pertaining to Darth Vader. And let me just tell you, I really want to see a horror film of Darth Vader hunting down Jedi and giving them the most gruesome death that we've ever seen in Star Wars. I think that'd be cool to see. But anyways, knowing all of what you've heard, seeing that James Earl Jones has retired as the iconic Darth Vader character from Star Wars, what do you think of this unfortunate and bittersweet news? Actually, you know what? Let me just rephrase that. It's not unfortunate, because I think James Earl Jones deserves to just rest his legacy and look back at the impact that he's had on so many Star Wars fans. He's inspired them to become actors, to, cosplay as Darth Vader in Comic-Con and Expos. And James Earl Jones is truly an inspiration. But another question. Do you think that James Earl Jones' Darth Vader retirement is permanent? I'm very intrigued to read your thoughts in the comment section below and at our Twitter inbox. Wakanda forever. More like speculation forever. Just another Tuesday, am I right? It turns out that the new Black Panther, who will be carrying the torch from the belated Chadwick Boseman, is going to be none other than Shuri, played by Letitia Wright. Allow me to draw evidence from Exhibit C, the artwork in the back of a Lego set. Here is it on screen for your reference if you're watching this on YouTube. Now, if you can pay attention to what's on the Lego set, it has Namor, M'Baku, and the new MCU character Ironheart. But something that stands out here is that you could see that Shuri is wearing the Black Panther suit. Now, if you're listening to this on audio, then you can just look up Black Panther Lego set leak. Now, this concept isn't alien to avid readers of the Black Panther comic book series. In fact, it's pretty much a given that when King T'Challa in the comic books is injured, or in the context of live action, dead, it's typically going to be Shuri that takes the mantle of Black Panther for a time. And while the Lego leak is very revealing, we don't really know for sure if it is accurate, especially since Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever hasn't even been distributed globally into theaters yet. But then there are other cases where Lego gets spoiled when it comes to Marvel, and if not Lego sets, then any piece of merchandise that is there to promote the release of an upcoming movie. Merchandising for Infinity War straight up spoiled for wielding Stormbreaker in Infinity War, despite the fact that everyone involved in Infinity War was tight-lipped. Even their sheer dedication to secrecy couldn't have prevented that leak from funneling its way into the interwebs. So I mean, again, the new Black Panther being revealed in a Lego set shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Would it have been better if they tried harder in regulating the leak? I mean, heck, I know this is the gaming industry that we're referring to, but GTA 6 managed to be leaked, and that's a high-profile project. So, I mean, it's not a stretch to say that Black Panther 2 got leaked. Perhaps. But at this point, Shuri taking over T'Challa's mantle as the Black Panther was an inevitable notion. Fans would do well to watch Black Panther Wakanda Forever to see how and when the mantle is passed on, and judge Wakanda Forever on its own merits, because I'm sure there's a lot more than what has been leaked already. The question now is, what do you think about the MCU's Black Panther being revealed in the Lego set? Did it ruin the suspense for you? Or did it make you rather more excited for the upcoming Black Panther sequel on November 11th, 2022? Let me know in the comment section below, or our Twitter inbox at Cinema Courtroom. Links are in the description below. Last week, a film called Blonde came out on Wednesday. A biography depicting the life and tragedies of Marilyn Monroe. Ana De Armas plays Marilyn Monroe in the biopic, and according to Ana De Armas herself, she wanted to approach this role with the utmost respect for the late performer. She took her dedication to the next level when Ana De Armas visited Marilyn Monroe's grave. I'm not gonna lie, from what I've been hearing about this movie, it is going to be one of those cultural phenomena productions, but at the same time, it won't be comfortable to watch. The stuff that the movie is going to portray in depth is what gave it the NC-17 rating to begin with. I can definitely see why Ana De Armas visited Marilyn Monroe's grave. This is what Ana De Armas had to say about this. We got this big card and everyone in the crew wrote a message for her. Then we went to the cemetery and placed it on her grave. We were asking for permission in a way. Everyone felt a huge responsibility, and we were very aware of the side of the story we were going to tell. The story of Norma Jean, the person behind this character, Marilyn Monroe. Who was she really? Based on Ana De Armas' account, here is what I think. I think that her comment is self-explanatory, which means that there isn't really much else for me to say as a male individual that is, never going to really comprehend or deal with what women in the film industry have had to endure because of some rich assholes. Nor do I think that I should be commenting with phrases like, oh, blonde is unnecessary because it is unsettling. Because, of course, it is going to be sad to watch. Of course, it is going to be unsettling. That's how it is meant to be. It isn't meant to be an exciting film. And the thing is, this is also one of those things where it's like, if you're uncomfortable with X or Y being shown, from the way I see it, I think that's the best time to reflect on how Marilyn Monroe felt, which is 100 times worse than how we might feel watching it, being portrayed with a creative license. This is an actual true story. No matter how much this movie is dramatized or accurate, it's based on a true story. Considering that Ana De Armas is playing Marilyn Monroe and mirroring her demeanors, her words, body language, her experiences, and pouring all of that talent into one pot of a movie, I think what Ana De Armas did was right, I suppose, in a way that she knew how to honor the Marilyn Monroe character. There are some characters where it isn't a big deal if you're playing them, and that's because you're doing a job. The job is what you're contracted and employed for to begin with. You either do it or not get paid. But I do think that real life figures like Marilyn Monroe should be taken with extra sensitivity and consideration, especially when it boils down to the direction of what the blonde film wants to be. Speaking of which, what direction does the blonde film want to be exactly? Is it supposed to be inspiring? Is Blonde meant to be just an accurate depiction of the stuff that Marilyn Monroe had to deal with as a movie star? I'm going to refrain from using the precise terminologies here since this podcast is being uploaded to sensitive platforms. But still, it really makes you think. What is Blonde trying to be? At the time that this is being recorded, I think that the closest thing that I can find to the answer of this question of what Blonde is trying to be is Vanity Fair's review of the Blonde film. There are some early reviews that call out the irony of Blonde. And you know what? I just want to quickly read what Vanity Fair has to say about the movie. I'm going to quote, "Blonde is boldly and complexly mounted, but that technique, so brazenly applied by Dominic, could actually be in service of something far simpler and more base. Blonde," and this is where I think we should read closely, "is a film partly about exploitation that might be exploitative itself, if the film is aware of that meta function. Then there's something interesting happening in it. If not, and Dominic thinks he is genuinely ennobling Monroe and expressing some kind of radical pity for her, then Blonde is a little perverse." I'm reading Vanity's review as someone who hasn't viewed the movie yet, as of right now. I need to give that decision some careful thought, especially if I were to, let's say, review it in a future podcast episode or just see it by myself and not review it at all, which is probably the best thing to do. But who knows? I might consider it, I might review it next week, or I might not even bring it up again. Anything could change, really. But the bottom line is, perhaps Vanity Fair might be right in one thing, if nothing else. Blonde, in a way, could be a paradox. If Blonde is trying to be a film addressing exploitation of a certain character, what is stopping it from being exploitated itself? Especially if certain scenes, which I've heard is going to involve the relationship with Marilyn Monroe and JFK, will be shown at great length. Anyhow, that is all I have to say in regards to Blonde, and Ana De Armas paying a visit to Marilyn Monroe's grave and why she done it. What do you guys think now that you've heard this? If you've watched Blonde, which is now streaming on Netflix, what do you think of the movie overall? Would you recommend that I, as a movie pundit, watch it? Whatever it is, let me know in the comment section below, and our Cinema Courtroom Twitter inbox at Cinema Courtroom. We have now reached the end of this podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Cinema Courtroom Show, where we critiqued movies. I had a lot of fun doing this podcast, so be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed episode 13 of the Cinema Courtroom. I hope to see you guys in the next episode, where we're going to talk about yet again another movie. As for what movie is going to be, find out when the next and 14th episode of the Cinema Courtroom Show launches this coming Friday on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, Anchor, and the Amazon platform, where you're going to access every single episode of the Cinema Courtroom online. Thank you once again for listening till the end. I am your Galactic Judge, Bucker Mark, and I hope you have a spectacular, spectacular day.
Hello there.
Court is now dismissed.